Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and here with me is one of the stars of Fat Ham on Broadway, Chris Herbie Holland. Chris, I have to dive in right away because, hearing a monologue about gingerbread men performing fellatio was not on my Broadway bingo card for 2023, but
Yeah,
I'm very glad that it's here because it's an amazing piece. And I love what it says. I think you have a line about like choosing pleasure over harm, which
yes.
I which really resonated. What does that monologue mean to you?
I mean, this monologue is such I feel like an amalgamation and a coming together of so many deep philosophies and healings that I've accepted into my own life and trying to make sure that I live this life of alignment and of pleasure. I mean, so many things have happened to us, the world, in the past 3 years. I mean, coming off of, police brutality and uprisings and COVID and death. I mean, we're coming out of this really heavy phase of somewhat of like an apocalyptic nature sometimes, of like learning how to um, reshift and how to really be in communication and community with each other, coming off of so much, hardship. And so choosing pleasure over harm and choosing happiness for oneself. And, it's I mean, these are things that I've been trying to live in my own life, and I want to impart this to an audience that, this idea that the world that we're striving for and trying to get to is not light years down the line. I mean, we choose joy every single day. It's a moment to moment present practice. I mean, you choose to be happy. We choose kindness and generosity. And if we choose these things with each other, we can liberate the world. I mean, that's what I really feel like that monologue is about.
Yeah. And it's a kind of presented in a maybe wild concept, but you can, at least when I saw it, you can feel the audience, from my perspective, shift from like this outrageous laughter to, oh, this guy really has like is dropping some like very deep truths on us right now. What does that shift feel like for you on stage?
I mean, it feels great as an actor, right? I mean, that's just the genius of James's writing is that he gives you an arc and so many great things to sort of dig into and relish as an actor. So, I mean, we've been around, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody, but been around people who, have started things, maybe they're high or maybe they're daydreaming or they're having these sort of musings and ponderings and you don't know where they're headed, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, there's wisdom in the mouth of fools. There's a kernel of truth in the thing that you're trying to get to, this sort of deeper meaning of what it means to be alive. And yeah, it starts out in this sort of high euphoric kind of area, but I think what T.O. is really trying to communicate and get to is that this there's this space inside of us that deserves healing and that deserves joy, and that we need to be living our lives on our own terms. The one way to misery loves company, and when you're living your life for somebody else because you're trying to be seen, or you're trying to wear the clothes that somebody else is putting on you because you're trying to match their vision of yourself, it's like that's what leads to unhappiness. You got to live life on your own terms. You got to choose self.
Yeah. You mentioned James before, and I think he actually wrote it about a actual video game he played, but
It is, yeah.
what what is it like to, what does it do for you to be able to work on a new piece where the playwright is there, so you have him available to pick his brain?
It's absolutely amazing. I mean, to have the visionary, the imagination there right in front of you and be able to talk shop with James and ask him about the monologue, or, what inspired it, or what inspired T.O., or, these are the sort of things that, I feel like every actor relishes going into a rehearsal room when you have the playwright sitting right there next to you. And James is he's not precious with his work. I mean, he's the ultimate collaborator. So there were plenty of moments in rehearsal where he's like, if things don't feel truthful, if they don't feel authentic, if the words don't feel good, throw it away, find something else, say it the way that you would say it. And like, and that way he always keeps the play alive and it's always breathing. It's this sort of organic, piece. And yeah, as an actor working on a new play like this, it's it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Your character too, I think, I see him as someone who inserts a lot of joy
Mm,
into the proceedings,
yeah,
because there's topics in there that can get heavy, or can
yeah.
get serious, and it feels like such a relief when you step on stage. What is it like to be able to shift the energy in the room like that?
Feels amazing. I mean, that's one thing that I've always wanted to, that I strive for in my life with family members or friends. I mean, to be a healer, I feel like I'm really good at holding space for people. I feel like I'm really good at listening to people in my life. And so the fact that I get to play a character that is centered around healing and joy, and that I get to be the vessel and this conduit for the audience, because I mean, that's one of the reasons why I feel like I have to leave. One of my friends who came that saw the play was like, right, you're the healer of the show, which means you can't be there. I missed your character on stage, but like, theater needs drama. You need opposing views, and if you have a character on stage that's constantly like, hey y'all, like, let's just hug and like love each other, I mean, it doesn't really push everything forward the way that you need it to. So to be able to breathe that breath of fresh air for the audience, when I come on stage, I love my second act entrance, and as soon as I utter my line, everybody starts laughing. It's like, right, I bring healing and this balm and this salve to people, where it's like, okay, we can breathe again. We're in safe hands.
And a lot of your work on stage is with Marcel Spears, and you guys, it's really fun watching the two of you, those characters bounce off one another.
It's my
What has
brother.
it been like building that type of chemistry together?
Easy. I mean, it's been great. I first met Cell, I feel like way back maybe in 2013. I was acting at Columbia, uh, collaborating with the MFA directors, and he was getting his MFA as an actor in the acting program. So I think we ran into each other a couple times there. He got to see my work. And then as soon as he came out of school, he started working on the mayor and then the neighborhood and stuff like that. So we've always been floating around each other's spheres. So to be able to actually get to share the stage with him and tread the boards with him and act opposite of him, it's been an absolute dream. I mean, it's family. It's family for real. I mean, I love him and I feel so safe um, acting with him, and I know he feels the same way. And I think that relationship is what reads on stage when people see us, and it's like, wow, they really are cousins. Oh, this really is a family affair, because we love each other that much.
And the relationship is, built off of and based off of Hamlet,
Yeah.
obviously. Was it at all useful to you to go back to that play? Like, how much are you kind of going back to
Hmm.
be inspired, or do you have to sort of leave that behind?
To tell you the truth, I mean, I'm very familiar with the play Hamlet. I mean, it's one of the shows that I've always wanted to act in, play the titular part of Hamlet. And I got a chance to play Claudius in grad school, so I'm familiar with it a lot. And I've seen productions of it in London and at the RSC, but it was never gone back to in the rehearsal room. We never used
Mm.
it uh, as sort of the Bible or the text. I mean, the only thing we used was James's work. And I remember, I think Benji K. Thomas, who plays Rabbi, she's like, I've never read it before. Like, who's Polonius and who's Hamlet? I mean, it'd be great to be like, to have an actor in the space who has no sort of tie to Shakespeare, to no sort of, to the content, and be like, right, you kind of don't need it. We're creating our own thing. We're creating our own remix. This is what we're bringing to the cookout. So we don't really need to um, harp or get too precious with our base material, because that's not really the relationships that we want to tell. I mean, that's what James talks about. He's like, I didn't want to make a play where everybody died at the end. He's like, I like Hamlet, but I wanted to make a play in which that was filled with joy, and that, people live and people choose a different reality. We choose, the direction that we want to go in. And it's not one of tragedy and trauma, it's one of joy and generosity and love, forgiveness.
I think it's interesting because the play in that way works on a lot of different levels,
Yeah.
and just like even hearing audience members around me, like people who know Hamlet are getting certain things, whereas there's plenty of people in the room who don't know it at all,
Yep.
who are enjoying it in a different way. What kinds of things do you hear from the audience in that respect?
Oh, I mean, just it's fantastic. It's James's work is centered around writing the fourth wall out of his plays, which I feel like one is very Elizabethan, is and the fact that James talks about he is infatuated with the crowd, not with the crowd, with the mob, right? And audiences in the 21st century of theater is sort of safe, but like a mob is dangerous. A mob is, a crowd. You don't really know how the crowd moves and sways and the energy like that. And that's what it was in Shakespeare's time, in Elizabethan times. To have people talking back at us is fantastic. Like that's what you thrive off of as an actor. Like, right, I'm talking to you and we're here in this space doing this weird sort of dance and telling a story and receiving a story. I want to know what you think about what's happening right now. Like this is some crazy stuff. Like we just saw a ghost, we just saw this. Things are happening to us, and to have that sort of flow with the audience, who probably, some of our audiences have never been to a Elizabethan show. They probably never seen a Shakespeare. They probably never been to the Globe and been like, oh, this is what it was like in that time to sort of interact with an audience. So to the fact that James has sort of built that into the play, and that we get to rip off the audience, and people are saying yeah, and I get to respond to that. I mean, that is, you dig into that as an actor, is what you want.
And you've been with this for quite some time. You were with the show off Broadway. Now that you're on Broadway, what would you say is kind of the biggest change you've experienced with the show?
The biggest change. Probably the space. I mean, the thing, the kernel, the nugget that I got from, my sister, Sade Lithcott, CEO of Dr. Barbara Interior's National Black Theater. She was talking to me, and she's always speaking life into me. One of the things that helped, calm me going into this process, she was just like, Chris, it's the same stage. She's like, a stage is a stage is a stage. It's the same stage. You're doing the same story. Don't psych yourself out into getting, it's Broadway and like I don't know what I'm doing and da da. She's like, you know this, and like you rely on the love of your cast to be the North Star and the guiding north of your compass whenever you feel lost. But I guess the thing that does feel, the biggest change has been going from the three-quarter round to a proscenium, and to having, more eyes, more energy, having like the staging was kind of wonky for us because we're used to doing it in such an intimate setting at the public, and to now have 740 seat house, and you got thousands of eyes on you, and now it's making sure that you know how to fill a space and play out and still keep the intimacy, but also, we have to hold a lot more. And that's where your technique and your craft as an actor really comes into play, learning how to, take something that was so intimate for maybe 240 seat house, which the Ansbacher has, and then ratcheting that up for 500 seats. Yes, the energy is different, which means you got to hold the audience in a much more loving and gentle way, because everybody has to get this story. The people in the balcony and the mezzanine have to get it, and they got to feel like they're right on stage, just like the people in the orchestra. So,
Yeah. And it's, I think, really great to see a play like this be embraced on Broadway. I mean, I think we know there's been a long period of time where plays, to make it to Broadway have to be a sort of very traditional model, which this play is not, but it's been
great story model.
super embraced. Off Broadway, you all got a special Obie Award. What does it feel like to be making your Broadway debut in this, and just to have people embrace this particular show?
I mean, dream come true. I just feel so and grateful to walk into that theater every single day. It takes my breath away. I mean, the fact that this is the first this is the first Broadway transfer that the National Black Theater has ever done. We're the first show that they've ever gotten to Broadway. We're the third show to ever transfer from a black house. I think the ones before that were, I think maybe Soldier's Play and uh, uh, for Color Girls, or
Mm,
like
yeah.
something like that. So it's just like to be and to have, there's no stars, right? Like you need a star in order to sell on Broadway, and there's no big name star. I mean, 6 out of the 7 people on that stage are making their Broadway debuts. So it's to you can't write this kind of thing. I mean, you look on this at this on paper, and it's like this doesn't work in the business model. This should fail, and yet the relationship to the piece and our relationship to each other, the way that we fall in love with each other every single day. I think that's what I'm most privileged about and most grateful about, that I get to walk into this Broadway house and tread these boards that so many greats have treaded, and yet I get to fall in love with my cast every single day. And people come and they are affected by that love, and they leave the theater and they're crying or they're in jubilation. And I get to do that my first time around. It's like I'm constantly pinching myself. Like it shouldn't. It's here, so I'm breathing it all in. I'm taking it all in. It's such a beautiful ride. I don't want it to stop. So if I'm dreaming, please don't wake me up.
Well, now that you have gotten a taste of Broadway on this ride, are you able to like look beyond that at all? Like, what would come next to make you creatively fulfilled?
I mean, I'm to tell you the truth, I've really just been staying in the moment. I mean, this is my first. I mean, before this, I hadn't worked since 2019, when I did White Noise at Berkeley Rep. So this is my. I know what it's like for the phone not to be ringing, and so the fact that I get to do this thing every single day, I'm just staying in the moment and really grateful for just to say these lines and just to get to act and to do the work. And if things come down after this, whether it's stage or, hopefully TV and film, knock on wood, that would be fantastic. But um, I'm staying present because I know what it's like to not work. And so the fact that I get to do this with these players and have this audience react to it in this way, I'm just really, really, really freaking grateful. And I don't want it to end. So I'm just sort of laser focused on just trying to stay in the moment.
Well, I think audiences are plenty grateful too. So thank you, Chris, so much. For everyone who's watching, subscribe to Gold Derby, keep with us this season, and go see Fat Ham on Broadway. Chris, thank you again for sitting down with me.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's been an absolute pleasure.